welcome to the AI in Healthcare event. My name is Jibran Jahshan, and I'm your host and moderator today. And I forgot that I need glasses these days to read. Okay. So from what I do, I work at NVIDIA. I lead a large group of engineers, software engineers that work with NVIDIA's partners to build products based on NVIDIA's platforms. The areas I support are embedded automotive and gaming and consoles. So just a little bit of hygiene today. Please take a moment and silence your phones. I know we're very social by nature. So if you'd like to have a sidebar or a discussion, our hosts have offered us the conference rooms back there. You can skip to the back and we can do the conversations. Over to the right there are the bathrooms if you need to use them. And in the interest of disclosure, we are recording this event for some colleagues who asked us to record it as they could not be here. So if you have any issues with your voice being heard, no one will be on camera with us. Please be advised. Before starting, I want to take a moment and introduce a person from the group that's hosting us. If you wouldn't mind come up here, and we thank you for offering us this fantastic space and wonderful hospitality. So I'll turn it over to you for a moment.
Thank you, and welcome to all of you. We're so glad to have you here at White & Case in our Silicon Valley office. I'm told this is the third tallest building of all of them. So decent views. They may be better, but they're hard to find in Palo Alto. For those who don't know White & Case, we are a very large international law firm. We have offices, 44 offices around the world in 6 continents. I don't believe we're in Lebanon yet. Our closest would probably be Cairo, but we have several in the Middle East. And this conference in particular is a wonderful conference for us because it hits some of our key areas of focus for the firm, including technology, for example, which is where I practice. So my background is computer engineering, and I do technology law, mainly intellectual property, patent law. We do a lot of work in that space for companies like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and many others. So obviously AI is a big topic for them these days and for us. But healthcare as well is also a big focus for the firm. We do a lot of work in the life sciences space for companies like Pfizer, Gilead, Genentech, and many others. And so it's great to see these areas of technology coming together and being discussed in a conference like this, particularly with the international focus. Just a few other facts. We've been in Silicon Valley since 1999, and the practices we have here include intellectual property, M&A, corporate technology transactions, antitrust, and if you need any information about our firm or about services we offer, please feel free to reach out to provide more information. With that, I'll turn it back over to you guys.
Thank you so much for hosting us. To just say that this event has drawn a lot of people, and we're excited about that. Many of you are part of LebNet, so many of you are not. The other parts are members of TechWadi. Both of these organizations exist in the Bay Area to bring people that are like-minded in technology and entrepreneurship together so they can network, they can learn from each other, they can support each other. So you'll be seeing a list of events coming up on our website as well as TechWadi's. I encourage you to add your email to our mailing list. We promise not to sell you products, but advertise events and you can be free to join. Okay, just one more thing here from the timeline. We're gonna go for about 45 minutes on the panel, followed by 50 minutes of Q&A, and then the remaining time, hopefully we can demolish the remaining food back there and network some more. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. I want to have the panelists introduce themselves to us, and then we'll get going. Starting with you. Yes.
Hi, thank you all for coming today. My name is Mona Flores. I'm a student of education for LebNet. I've been here for many years, and today I work as a global head of AI. I am actually a doctor by training. I was practicing from 2015 until I learned what happened in AI. So here I am today, and I'm happy to talk to you about the intersection between AI and medicine. Any questions you have?
Hi everyone, my name is Abdul Hamid Halabi. I am the CEO of Clinlab.AI. I am a computer engineer by training. I spent about 18 years of my career at NVIDIA. I used to design chips. And then I ended up going to healthcare. So I focused a ton on AI in healthcare. I did that class with this very nice woman who called me up one day and said, it was me actually. She said, have you ever interested in AI? I'm like, you're a cardiac surgeon. Like, why would you come there? And it's like, And then she's like, well, I'm going to get it. I'm like, okay, great. There are these three things that, courses and stuff. And then she shows up, finished AI courses, developed her own AI. And it's been very hard to resist. So when somebody really believes in something that they are willing to change it.
I just wanted to work with you.
So yeah, it was, I just did a lot of platform, the early partnerships, the early academic stuff that was around AI. I just was lucky enough to be a part of and enjoyed it quite a bit. With COVID, I wanted to see what AI really looks like because video is phenomenal. You get to actually going as a platform company and see a lot of different people. We also get to theorize a bit, and because you're not really in healthcare. So I jumped over to a company called Tempest. It's founded by Eric Lefkowski, who's the founder of Groupon. He had cancer and ended up developing what ended up being the largest cancer sequencing lab in the country. Called me up and said, Abdul, I'm sitting on all this genomic data, what can we do? So I led up his data and AI business unit and product team, and it was phenomenal. Back March of last year, we deployed an AI algorithm that could predict MSI mutations just by looking at histology, which is really big for men because only 3% get cancer. And as a result, men don't get sequence for it. So it was really fun. And then I decided I want to do it on my own. So I started my company last March. And I'll tell you a little bit about it.
All right, perfect. Hi, everyone. I guess I'm the odd one out here. My name is Abood Quraini, or Abdul Hamid Halabi. I also work at NVIDIA. I've been there for a little over 2 decades now. I started in the Harvard team building chips like Abdul Hamid, and he recruited me into healthcare about 4.5 years ago. And right now I'm doing tech marketing there, so it's fun. So I hope to talk to you about what I'm doing there and what I'm learning too.
Okay, so just an explanation. It seems like it's a NVIDIA game here. We didn't do a double switch on everybody, but unfortunately, 2 of the other panelists had unforeseen circumstances and they had to cancel last minute. So in one case, it was a competing personal commitment. The other was illness. So we wish them both well, and hopefully they can join us in the future discussion. Okay, so when I joined NVIDIA, the word AI always meant action items. So people say, I'm going to give you AI. You have the AI. AI is AI, right? And 20 years later, it has a completely different meaning.
It meant autoimmunity.
Autoimmunity. And so just a note on, some of us with more white hair and been in the valley, there's all these trends that come and go, every few years. And if you test off something that's not a trend, is that takes a foothold because the market realizes it's a true technology, it's a true enabler. And I feel like AI is like that today. Actually, many of you are wearing iWatches today or Apple Watches that already have some built-in AI. Most of you use Facebook and tag, and there's auto detection of people's faces. That's AI driven. You do searches today on Google, on Bing. There's auto completion, and you interact with Alexa and Siri and the rest. And so a lot of that is AI behind the scenes. So there's no doubt that AI is relevant. And I think it's beginning to make its way into healthcare because healthcare has so many of the key requirements for AI. It creates massive amounts of data, something like 3,000 exabytes of data exist today that are in digital form. Had huge budgets, and it's becoming very interdisciplinary. So physicians, healthcare guys have to look out to biology. They have to look out to this, to that, in order to be effective at what they do. So AI can help with that overwhelming sense that all of these people are faced with. And so I wanted to start with you, Mona, because you've been on that side. You've been in medicine. You're now in business development. You apparently write AI code as well. And you talk to almost everybody out there. So tell us what you think are the 2 most immediate areas of growth? Because there's a lot of entrepreneurs here, a lot of people who are in the sector. Where do you see a lot of opportunities in the near term?
Yeah, I think there's plenty of opportunity, and it's in so many different sectors, it's not technology stuff. But I want to go to something I think we talked about it 5 years ago. Is everyone is looking at AI to solve, with imaging and all of the imaging that evolves out there, like, oh, we're gonna find cancer on the CP and we're gonna take the radiologists away and they're not gonna have jobs anymore. There is so many other things that are broken in medicine. So when you say actually AI will help medicine, that's, the fact is healthcare, it's so expensive, it's so inefficient. There's a lack of access to it. So there's tons of places where we can automate and we can do things, not even on the clinical side, just from scheduling, from freeing up people's time that will really change that. So automation in the clinic, where how to schedule patients because you've been able to look at all of the data and miss an appointment because they missed the last 5 appointments and they don't have a card and what have you. If you're able to gather all of that information, then you have to maybe schedule them at the end of the day, so they're going to stop the day. So that's a very simple example. But automation in terms of scribes, like today, a doctor will spend lots of the time just sitting there and documenting after the key patients. Sometimes in the middle of the night, and she has forgotten what she's even talked to them about, right? If you can have an AI that is ambient, that is recording everything and summarizing it in a way that is such a nonsense, then that is something that's helpful. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do besides clinical. So then if you go to the clinical side, and I think that's going to come, we don't have all of it today, think of precision medicine. I want to give you an example. And I'm going to ask you actually, not about that, we want you to answer. So if God forbid, someone you like is diagnosed with cancer, let's say you have breast cancer, and they go and they get all of the testing and what have you, and the doctor comes, the oncologist tells you, I want to put you in one on 20 milligrams of tamoxifen, which is an anti-estrogen drug. And I want to do that because all of the clinical trials, that have been done, have only been done on 20 milligrams. And then you go to another doctor and they're like, well, I think you just need 1 milligram. And then another doctor says, you just need 5 milligrams. It's like these studies were done on just this one specific population of potassium. Well, there is a lot that we don't know today. And the faster we can experiment in clinical trials, the faster we will be able to get the information that is actually actionable and can change that, can change someone's life. Because tamoxifen, can help you not have breast cancer later on, and can have uterine cancer, and you can die of PE. So there's always, everything that should consequence, right? Today there's an AI program actually for these patients that looks at their family history, it looks at their genetic profile, it looks actually at the pathology, what's the pathologist, at the histology of the pathology of the tumor, and tells you how fast that tumor is going to grow and what exactly is it responsive to. So with that, it is able to spit out a risk profile. It can tell you you're very low risk, so perhaps you only need to take this drug now and think it's like, not really, really low risk, maybe I will take this for 2 years, versus you're very high, I'm gonna take it for 20 years. So the more information at our fingertips, the more we can have better treatments, the more we can personalize treatment, so that not everyone is being treated the same way, because none of us are the same.
Excellent. That's a great example. Segue into something I want to ask Abdul Hamid, because of the current company you work, where you're trying to form, well, it's already formed as a business, and even look at it, was meant to try and address some of what you saw was the inverted business model in healthcare, where there's so much expenditure, as Mona said, there's so much waste and not enough time. And you think that there are different ways of doing it that could be better than our AI is doing. So maybe tell us a little bit about what your views are on this. Maybe touch on your company, advertise, maybe recruit more listeners.
Oh, thank you, Jibran. I really appreciate it. And I'm really pleased to was invited. For those who don't know, Jibran is probably one of the most impactful leaders at NVIDIA, not just as an American, but in general. So I have the privilege when he said, come and join us on this panel and the most of it. So here's my answer. I have, Clinlab.AI is all about creating data-driven laboratories. Okay? And the question is, how did we end up here? When I was looking for AI and where it can be, there's a lot of amazing, beautiful stories about AI, right? Including the one I just told you. 3% of men have cancer. If you find them, the medication is wonderful for them. If you don't find them, then they go on a regular track, they take chemotherapy, and they can't take Keytruda, which is immunotherapy. They don't get found by naturally because it's only 3%, so you don't test for them. So we developed an AI algorithm that can go and actually find these patients from a modality that's available before, right? Every man, when they develop cancer, prostate cancer, they get a biopsy. So can you find it from the biopsy? Or do you have to wait until you get sequenced? The sequencing is $2,500. So ideally, it looks great. Okay, so this gets done all the time. I can actually go find these people and help them. Sounds great. It's actionable. Okay, if I found that person, it's actionable. There's a medication I can give them that's different, that's great for them. So that's rule number one in any AI application if you're looking to develop. The other problem is it accessible? Meaning, can patients and more importantly, can physicians consume the AI that you're creating? It turns out that in my case, the previous algorithm I worked on, it's not. The reason is that algorithm runs on digital pathology, meaning you need a digital image of pathology. For those who don't know, today, if you take a biopsy of a human being, it gets put on a glass slide. There's a cover slip on top of it, and then the physician looks at it on a microscope. That's the standard of care. Even though 95% of healthcare institutes own a digital scanner, only 5% use it. And so if you develop a solution that needs a platform like that, it's not going to work. Okay, now it became your job to go change all of healthcare to adopt digital pathology. That's a very big job if you're trying to develop. So accessibility is very, very important. Right? And then the last part, which I didn't understand until I actually owned my own company, Clinlab, AI, is affordability. Where is the money? Always about the money. I know we love healthcare, and you guys will not appreciate that I'm sitting here, but it's all about the money. Are you going to make the physician or the healthcare institute money? You can't cost them money. Saving money is not as interesting. Can you make money? And that's very, very important. That's why I developed Clinlab.AI. And the whole idea is similar to what Mona just talked about. I'm sorry, this was not controversial. I know we talked about something controversial, but I agree with her 100%. Number one thing you can actually do is operational. Right? So we're actually building laboratories as a service, and we're placing them in the community where the patients are. So I go to a physician group, large enough to have 10 to 60 physicians. But today rely on Quest. They send to Quest, they run data, they give them numbers, and 80% of the data that's used in your healthcare is a generic number that's thrown back at the doctor. The question is, can I actually create a laboratory, a complete solution, turnkey solution that I place inside of your office that gives you insight, not just numbers, but insight? And I'm using AI in order to enable me to do that. Yes, we are operational. We have ran about 150,000 tests last month at 40 different labs that I manage as IoT, just separate units. They're all separate units. And my challenge is I use AI in order to normalize the data that comes back from all of them. So that's one simple use case. You wouldn't be able to do what I'm trying to do and compete with the quality that Quest provides, where they have massive amounts of data with just small labs. But if you brought them all together and used AI in order to detect quality issues, right? I'm looking at the frequency of events that happen, and if they change, it tells me that something wrong just happened. Then I'm able to provide the same quality to patients. So that's the first use of AI that I have. The second use case of AI that we developed on top of this is early prediction of disease. So I acquired the company last June. I was just sharing with Abood that we have about 30 years worth of data on patients. Can I actually come and predict that you're going to develop diabetes 3 months earlier? Turns out I can. Can I predict that your kidneys are about to shut down in 3 months? Turns out I can. Why is that important? Okay, so look at the things I just told you, right? I said you gotta be actionable, right? Why is that important? It turns out that if I actually can catch you early with diabetes, diet change works. If I catch you later and your body has entered into that spiral, too late. So it's actionable. It's really great, right? Is it accessible? It turns out that if I'm actually running the lab, the physician has to read the lab results. Yes. I'm in the middle of his process. He has to read it. She has to read it. So if I can come and actually put a note in there that says, Abdul Hamid is likely to develop diabetes in 3 months. They see it. They have to see it. Right? And do something about it. The question is it affordable in this whole healthcare system? Is it going to make the physician money? Turns out the answer is also yes. Because in the United States, if a physician performs a service, they can bill for it. Performing a lab service allows them to bill for it. They can today increase their revenue by about 15% just by having a lab. Ignore all of the AL. It turns out my incentive and theirs is aligned financially. And what's even more exciting is where healthcare is going. So we're in a fee-for-service today model. We're switching to a value-based model. Meaning, instead of paying you for all the services you perform on me, I'm just going to pay you for how well the population does that you're managing. And in that model, fantastic, because detecting disease early is going to actually result in much better patients. So I am helping them generate more money. So that's kind of what I think about operational. And then you've got the use cases of early detection of disease. And I think the third one, which is more exciting, I haven't started working on that one yet, is today you run your tests and they come, I'm sure every single one of you, right? My chart pings and they say, your results. Abdullah is responsible here at Stanford, right? It pings and you get these results. Okay, great. I got 15 on some test, 32 on the other test. What does that mean? Oh, you're within the normal range. Whose range? Yeah. Yeah, Abdullah put in the range. I'm telling you because I put in the range, right? And that's a range for a white man or a white woman for the last 10 years or something, and that's the range that's acceptable. We deserve our own ranges, right? I need a personalized range for every data set that I have. At least I need a personalized range for my sex. I need a personalized range for my age. I need, right? And that's where I'm going with all of this data. I do think that as a patient, eventually, you ought to own your own range. You walk in, it's like, here's my range. Now that we've solved the operational problems of normalizing the data that's coming in, all the other things I just talked about, I think we can achieve personalized medicine. You get tested at least twice a year. You're generating every time you get tested, 100 results get generated. They become much more useful.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I completely disagree with it.
There's probably many Middle Easterns here, not just Middle Eastern, Jordanian, Palestinians, what have you. Do you know the vitamin D level? And if you do, who has low vitamin D level? Look at these then. Do you really think we all have low vitamin D, or is the reference rate for a Caucasian population? I yet have to meet someone who's Middle Eastern who has a regular vitamin D level. I don't think it's right. I think it's just around reference. Go ahead.
So do you think we have enough data on racial categories to be able to do that kind of thing? Because one of the things I face in my research is just not having enough in a certain category. Right. So if you don't have enough Middle Easterns people or enough Asians or whatever the category is, how do you split them out to create the ranges?
I love that question. We talk about federated learning. That's one way we're getting get more data. That's diversified. But
Maybe easy. I wanted to give a chance to Abood to tell us a little bit about, your technical marketing, which is sort of outward looking, promoting platforms, but obviously a successful technical marketer is promoting the right platform for the right need, right? Not just random stuff. So NVIDIA has many areas we're going after, but you must see some areas that are right for AI right now. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you see and why AI is relevant, right? I mean, some of the things we're talking about here can be solved by other techniques, but AI offers a unique advantage. So if you can tell us what you see, that'd be helpful.
Sure. I think
Yeah, certainly there's a lot of use cases that, AI can benefit healthcare. But let me say, maybe I'll start with an anecdote. Like last year, I was inspired by a visit that I made to we were actually invited to a surgery. It was basically an endometriosis surgeon. So basically the female reproductive system. So we actually saw two surgeries there. And we entered the operating theater. And obviously, I'm very pleased, so I count my blood and all that stuff. But nevertheless, I did survive. And those types of procedures, they call them minimally invasive procedures. And so anyway, but that was all good, all well and good and everything. But the one observation I made is there's that one doctor, he's an expert, and then there's like 5 or 6 people around him. And I'm starting to think to myself, when you mentioned operational and waste, why do you make those work? I mean, there's got to be a better way, right? And so what I figured out is even in the minimally invasive surgeries, you have basically the surgeon, okay? And then you have all those clinicians around, nurses around him. They're basically trying to help him navigate, because typically in minimally invasive surgery, there's like multiple incisions. The doctor usually controls 1, maybe 2 incisions. One is basically the device, like it could be a scissors, or if he's trying to, cut something in your body. And another could be like a camera. But there's other incisions where, there may be a suction device, there may be an insufflation device or anything of those sort. So I was thinking to myself, like, you need all those guys to kind of control that. What if you have like a robotic system that's AI enabled that could actually do all of that? So, I left basically the session thinking to myself, there's got to be a better way. And lo and behold, I kid you not, 2 months later, we got invited to a customer partner who's actually building a robotic, minimally invasive device. So we went there. I think they're up in Redwood City, so we went there. They showed us a live demo, and immediately I basically saw the problem that they were trying to solve was exactly the problem that I saw there. And I was thinking, essentially, giving the clinician all those superpowers, I feel is just amazing. So that's kind of one thing I see that is going to be a big deal, like robotic surgery. And to Abdul Hamid's point, I feel that it also addresses accessibility, it addresses cost. I think like there's so much benefit that comes out of it. So to me, that's kind of one inspiration. The other area that I feel is exciting, where AI is and will add a lot of value, is in the early parts of what I've called drug discovery. So in virtual screening. So let me give you another example. Everybody's familiar with COVID and what we've kind of lived with over the past couple of years. COVID is not going to disappear. COVID is here to stay. It's not going to go away. And what I mean by that is you're always going to have those mutations and variants that keep on coming. And so the question is, how do you quickly iterate? How do you quickly find the therapy for that particular variant? And in my mind, the only way to do it is to be able to quickly, iterate with AI so that you're able to find quick therapies. Now, I realize that the early part of the drug discovery space is not the bottleneck. The bottleneck usually is the clinical trials, but at least every little bit counts at the end of the day. So that's kind of what I feel is going to be very impactful in healthcare. And that's kind of what I see, a big kind of happening. And, I wouldn't even pin it to just, let's say, COVID. I mean, I feel that our ability to discover drugs or therapies much faster will improve the accessibility problem and also improve the issue related to, rare diseases, for example, where there's a given, there's a target. What I was going to say, there's basically a target, but call it protein that causes disease, or it's in a disease pathway. Like, how do you quickly find the therapy to actually address that pathway? So I definitely see a lot of impact there.
So I mean, I want to tie some of these things together. In my opening, I talked about how AI is data driven, right? And Natalie touched on something. So one thing that happened during COVID, because mainly the government tried to encourage open collaboration among typically competing and closed up organizations, right? There was a big incentive to try to solve this pandemic. So that led to discussions around, well, how do you crowdsource data from different people? How do people protect data that has privacy and other implications, but allow the data to be used for progressing the science, right? And so that led us to maybe discussions around federated learning, right, which is one way of solving this problem. So I know, Mona, this is a topic dear to your heart, and you've seen it work in the output. So maybe talk about that. And then at a later part, we'll talk about some of the things around bias and safety and all that time allowing. So.
So I was saying about, I think you bring up a great point, really, and it's that, we might have a lot of data, but it's not all actionable because it might not be the data that is specific to the disease that we're looking for, the population that we're looking for. So especially for rare diseases, you might have, some muscular dystrophy cases, another one has another, and now one place has a lot of data. And, you talked about money and other things about money. Data today is money. So a lot of people are not willing to share data because they're like, oh, we can develop so many things on it, so pay us for it. And then a lot of times they hide behind that privacy thing. It's like, oh, this is like HIPAA data. Let's take it as fine, it's guided information. But there's a way today to be able to combine the learnings from all of this data without sharing the data, without me being able to look at it. I'm able to develop an algorithm and train this algorithm when the data is still sitting with Sandra, still sitting with you, it's still sitting with you. And no one is able to see it. You don't see the data. I don't see any of the data I'm able to train. So we took machine learning and I'm able to train it in a distributed fashion and in private fashion. And now you can get data from all over the world. And actually during COVID, we took that, to heart and I'm like, let's test it. So we got many institutions, we ended up with 20 institutions around the world, from Asia, from Europe, from Latin America. And we trained an AI model to be able to detect COVID in patients just from a few variables from the EMR. So someone who came in and, has a cough and you have to, they didn't get a COVID test, you're able to just run a few parameters and you're able to tell not only if they have COVID, but are these people going to need oxygen? Are they going to need oxygen today or tomorrow or maybe never? So that will allow you to triage these patients and triage resources. And we showed that actually you could do this. You could train this model with data from everyone and all of these institutions, but they didn't even know each other. One institution did not know who the other 19 institutions were. So federated learning is one way to be able to bring all of that data that you can find in one place and still adhere to the privacy and the security requirements.
How far are we from that person range?
Well, I think that will have to be your own range over time that you're going to be able to, to put in one place to be able to test it and analyze it, right? That's not everyone's range. But if those, affect, and we talk about that soon. So for the vitamin D.
Yeah, it has to be against,
Correct.
population.
If they had more Middle Easterns that regularly developed that range, then they probably the range would include that our biology too. But they didn't. The same thing with the genome, they sequenced the genome. Like today, a lot of the mutations, was it the Netherlands or like somewhere in Europe, they have all this population and everything that we know about the genes are coming from that population. It doesn't apply to everyone else. So, data is key and everything we use the data is key. And hopefully one day we will get to that.
So, I mean, I don't know if you know enough about this, but, data exists, being more digitized, but for the data to be useful, it has to be labeled, it has to have some data on it, right? And that's another challenge. I work in automotive, I know that you can collect a lot of data, but we have thousands of people whose job is to look at videos and tag, this is a person, this is a red light, this is a cross, because the data otherwise doesn't tell you that, right? And then once you train the networks, the network will become better. So for medicine, given what we described, people scribble things here, people scribble things there, different labs. How do you, what ideas exist for making sure the data is usable in the first place? There's a huge effort to make it usable, right? Never mind what Mona talked about.
100%. I think it's a really interesting topic. I think you got to think about it. I might disagree with you a little bit. Right? Data is not available. Not even today. I think one of the problems that was just alluded to right now is, do we actually have enough data that we can use? And is it in a place that we can get them? Right. So today there are a lot of blood tests, by the way, for Middle Eastern people sitting at Quest. Good luck figuring out how to get money enough into Quest, turn the system that works. And from a technology, I think, Mona is leading the world, in my opinion, with federated learning today, which is what we need. But from an economic perspective, okay, and I'm taking the role as CEO and business person in this conversation, it's very difficult to actually generate enough data, which is why I think we need to flip this upside down, find ways to incentivize financially the generation of data that we care about. So that's number one. Your question about labeled data depends on what problem we're trying to solve. Right. So when remember, and nobody did this better than you, right? Like when you're trying to figure out, okay, I'm gonna go and figure out if something is coffee or not. Just use a hot drink, and you can actually overlay with a free label. Right? We can get a free label by just looking at it, and then with an infrared camera, it will automatically label things for you. That actually happens a lot in healthcare. Diabetes is very important. I want to predict diabetes. Turns out I have a free label called A1C. I don't need to get at your electronic health records in order to figure out that the physician labeled you as diabetic. I can look at your A1C score and figure out that you're actually diabetic. In some cases, we can get at free labels. In other, which is what I did also with the pathology example, right? Because the label was the genomic data, and I had the detailed image, so we could actually create it. In other cases, what we use is ChatGPT here. Okay.
Actually, all the questions are generated today.
I've become a very good detective when somebody likes an email by ChatGPT. Hope you're having a great day with it. And you see, but the whole concept is the ability to read text and turn it into information. At Tempus, we had over 400 people label people's medical records. So we can extract what medications you have. We can extract what disease you have. What was the progression? But I think with tools and NLP and the developments, maybe Abood can touch on it a little bit. There's so much development that I think we can actually enable AI to generate a lot of these labels that we have, because going after structured data, the doctors are going to kill you if you ask them to start integrating stuff into fields instead of writing the notes they want to write.
So that was a great prompt for you, Abood, about natural language processing and how it could help us with some of them, or not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you need, large magnitudes of data and weak labeling, because using human beings to label all the time is not financially effective. And as a result, it will not happen.
And I think right now, I mean, we're entering this, you guys are going to hear a lot about foundational models. The whole point of foundational models is to give you that seed to improve the productivity of actually labeling data. You guys heard of Meta, segment anything model. Like if somebody, like Jibran, we talked about it, the label was,
Or maybe some people were working on it here.
I don't know, it's even pictures, so I think a lot of those are tools where you can actually use AI to label.
Okay, so just to wrap up on the data thing, in automotive, which is the world I'm not as close to healthcare, we augment actual data with synthetically generated data, right? And there's issues with the precision and the fact that modeling a car is just a rendering problem, right? Everybody knows what a car looks like. It's a bit harder with disease because you're still in discovery. So is there not an opportunity for synthetic data to kind of augment the real data, or is that just out of the question, not a practical consideration for healthcare? And if you can comment on this stuff.
I think 100% does say Because when somebody first told me, it's like they're gonna generate synthetic MRIs, and I'm like, what the heck? The second one's looking at the synthetic MRI. And, but the thing is, you're not generating them and you're telling disease numbers, you're generating them labeling in order to create more data to train an AI model that can then go and detect a lesion in the liver or in the spleen or what have you. So it's just the same way in automotive. You create this synthetic data in order to be able to teach the algorithm how to recognize things. So this takes synthetic data. Same way in medicine. You're teaching it to recognize that when these pixels are in this position, this means this or that. So there's definitely a place for it. And we've seen it, and we've tested some of the models. And you have to play with how much synthetic data you put into the model and how much weight do you give the synthetic versus the real data, but it's totally doable and useful in certain places. And it's in medicine, it's really a sad statement on us, because in actuality there is enough scans and MRIs and everything involved. We just don't have access to them, and they're outside.
I think you can use it for validation. That's where I would play with the data. Figure out what are the limits of the model. Where is it going to fit? Yeah, but one thing that I learned from automotive in the work that we've done again that's really common is the idea of breaking the problem down, being hierarchical. I think when AI started, I remember walking Johns Hopkins 2015, trying to switch inside phenomenal scientist. I'm like, how you gotta use AI? She wants to do, sepsis. She wants to predict sepsis. I'm like, feed all the data. I labeled sepsis so easy, and let's do it. And then I learned how bad of an approach that is. First of all, you can't explain things. Number two, the labels are actually difficult to generate. They're really reliable labels. Like, when did the sepsis happen? Because so I think what happened in your team, maybe that's a great lesson to learn, honestly, just breaking down the problem to hierarchical, where you can actually go generate the label much more reliably, detect a car, detect a tree, detect the street, detect blah, 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 blah. And then you put a simple machine learning on top of it that combines the information together. And this way, each segment is something you can validate, is something you can create synthetic data and feel good about. But we don't have that much. Like, I can think in my field right now when I'm looking at clinical, molecular, digital pathology, that I can actually generate that kind of model. But still looking back in my head, that's phenomenal. So hopefully they can help.
You don't know the digital data, right? With all the transformers and self-supervised learning. And there's a lot of AI problems that you don't need labels to think.
You get a lot of data, and you just get a model that produces labels for you.
Jensen, our CEO, had this thing a few years ago. I think he was wondering that it's AI that writes AI. Yes, and that's no, AI is generating the labels. AI is writing AI. So it moves on a lot from, you have to have the label data.
So
At that too late, sorry.
we're gonna take questions in, but I'll ask.
So, I went to regional families. What other, forms of exchange can you give the customer consent of data? It's not cash. I know this because in my previous company, we actually created licenses to our legacy software. That was the customers. They give us what are the other things that have been done to experimented with these customers that actually work?
I think you can develop something that they can use it, then it's a potential license to use it.
I mean, I think from what I was saying before, I see you gave the example of Quest. They're sitting basically on a treasure. They just don't know how to monetize it. They monetize it once with them, but it could be used for something to his question. If you create the right business incentive, maybe this data becomes a bit more. Maybe Amazon would buy it.
I think my answer is I need to think not the typical. Still very. By the way, guys, for those who don't know him, Sham is one of the legends that actually led GE where they're at today in terms of instruments expansion in the Middle East. So it's a pleasure to see him here. I think that you need to think beyond the two-way exchange. The three-way exchange, for example. when I wanted to, place the pathology, the pathologist, remember that algorithm we just talked about, we get cancer. Okay, I need digital pathology, costs $100,000. Who's gonna pay? Pathologist will. So I got a three-way deal between myself, pharma, and pathology. Pharma is actually willing to sponsor it now. Why? Because when you find that patient, who's going to make money? Pharma. So think outside of the box. See if you can actually create an arbitrage situation where you're actually doing a service for somebody and they're doing a service for somebody else, then they can actually benefit and get that circle to close. That's essentially what I'm doing. I'm trying to actually get the result created so that insurance can pay the doctor and then I get it. It doesn't have to be a one. Those one-on-one are very hard. They take forever. And often there's a person who's going to benefit even more than you by what you're trying to do. Get them. Pharma in particular, and we spent so much time working with AMCs. Just add a zero. Any number you want. If you're working with a doctor, just add a zero. Okay, if you're going to charge $100 from a doctor, add a zero. Pharma will say yes. If you don't have the zero, you're wrong. Something's wrong.
And there's new, like, new brokers now that are emerging, that data brokers, that actually is with the hospitals and the hospital can sell its data and many different places with this broker for different uses. And it's a gold mine. And it's sad because the patient data, but the patients are not actually benefiting from what you eventually will benefit from AI. But it's their data that's being sold by the hospital administrators.
Or you guys can.
I think people today. It's other.
Is it that easy to get data? There's HIPAA, right? There's a lot of these security, privacy constraints. Like the customer, you cannot release their data, right? So the customer has the right
You consent. Yeah.
right? So how can hospitals share that data?
Like, that's what I thought, and then, I'm talking about how do you send this data? There's so many loopholes in that they are able to actually come the data.
Just depends. You cannot release a patient's data. There's actually a $10,000 liability for any single patient. So if you have 100,000, you have. It's a really big problem. But if you de-identify data, then yeah, if you de-identify the data, you can actually act on it. And no, it's not just you who owns the data. There's the physician, not the physician, the healthcare institute that produced the data owns the data equally. You have the right to the data.
They want my data.
Yeah, you have the right to the data. But they have the equal right to the data in order to go and actually use it, develop a better test on your behalf. For example, I saw you and I want to develop a test that's better for you. That's actually a good thing, I think, and they have right to it. They have right to financially benefit also from that data.
Can they share something?
I haven't seen any model that you're gonna get paid.
I saw a startup that's really trying to do a blockchain technology.
Yeah.
To patient data so that I don't think about money.
Okay, 46.
And I think the problem with the personal decision on data, for example, happened in Europe, right? Europe went all GDPR, which is really phenomenal. It actually became a hurdle to creating any insight because any patient has the right at any time to pull their data out. How do you do that?
So if I could latch on that and pivot a little bit to some of the challenges AI has. Again, drawing on automotive and latching on to something we just said. We collect data worldwide, but in Europe, for example, as you drive and you see all these cars around, you're supposed to blur people's faces, right? And if you don't, you have to stop and ask for permission. Imagine driving a million miles and stopping everywhere. So that won't happen. At the same time, there's a high bar to prove that there's no bias in your data. And how do you know there's no bias? You have to be able to say, well, this person is white, this person is black, this person is wearing hijab, otherwise, the data is useless for you. So we're struggling with trying to figure out a path forward that is viable with all this regulation. So regulation can enable and encourage a sector, like we give examples. We talked about COVID and you know, for the president's office, all the gates are off, trying to figure out how to contain this pandemic and then enable some creativity. Right now, there's all this fear about the AI. It's going to take people's jobs over. Elon Musk thinks it's evil. People in Italy, you know, put 6 months. So there's all these fears, yet it has so much promise. So can you comment? Can either any of you comment on where do you see this going? And are these well-founded concerns, or are they just the indication of ignorance and early adoption?
You know, we were, oh, sorry. It was funny, we were having this discussion yesterday at home. So remember, I guess for most of us here, 20, 30 years ago, when calculators came to the picture or entered the fray, I guess. You know, schools were like, oh my God, you know, students are going to be using calculators now next week, cheating and all that kind of stuff, right? Today we have ChatGPT. Oh my God, students are going to be writing essays, they're going to use ChatGPT. I'm sorry.
They're on the Snapchat thing.
Whatever, right? And so in my mind, honestly, I don't subscribe to this dystopian future in my mind. I'm of the mindset that guys just embrace it. But you know, have mechanisms to guard it. That's really my view. I mean, you cannot ChatGPT is out. The cat's out of the bag. You cannot stop it. Other than
I think bias is gonna happen, and I think it's a good thing.
Okay, well, why that? What do you mean?
I think bias is a phenomenal thing that you definitely want to, because that is equal to really, no, it's equal to personal bias. If you want to actually have anything, so my favorite example is for people like driving cars, right? I bring a car here and I say it's self-driving, fully automatic, doesn't have a steering wheel. Would you get into it?
I would.
No, even better. No steering wheel. Would you get it?
Roll,
100% record. 100%.
If you care enough.
40-60.
It was trained in England. Okay, you want the car that's used in England, trained in England. You want the car that's used here, trained here. You want foundational models to be shared. Same thing with healthcare. We just talked about it. You want it Middle Eastern, it needs to be biased. By definition, it needs to be biased.
I wouldn't call that bias. That is my feeling this, but we wanted that context, but it's not bias. I think bias, the definition is like,
Yeah.
bias is, you know, when you have an unintended consequence, because you didn't have a balanced population when you send it, or you deduce, you know, this is, let's say, I'm gonna make an employment decision, because of all of these selected who was employed in the past. If it was all males that were employed in the past, what the AI is gonna say, you know, forget the females, just employ the.
That's okay.
That's bias, but that's different.
That's okay if you're a model for males, as long as you know why you got bias.
I think maybe a better way of saying what you're saying, you're not saying it right, is that bias exists. So naturally, we should expect that the models have bias.
We should try to, like, you know, there's bias in the world, and we should try to eliminate it.
That's
We shouldn't just like go and say, it's bias, so we're gonna have a crisis.
I think the bias that AI brings to the fore actually highlights the problem that we would otherwise not solve, because it's going to go on scale. People are making important decisions based on an algorithm that is inherently biased. And there's financial consequences, liability around it, right? If a car hits a person because of their skin color, somebody's responsible, right? And so that brings to the fore the urgent need to address bias, which wouldn't have existed before. So that's the opportunity. I don't think I would want bias. I think that's not what you're saying.
Different than healthcare. See, within healthcare, you really want the model to train on the. So I'll give you an example. EGFR, we programmed it 100 times, right? Early predictor of kidney disease. EGFR had for the longest time two equations. It's a calculated time, right? One equation was for black people, one equation was for white. And she's so excited. And I know, okay, I'll be quiet. Today they tried to merge them in the funniest way possible, just so that we're socially correct. I think we are actually socially just if you address people with the right model for their own needs. That's why.
I think we're arguing on the semantics here, but bias here. But I'd love to hear that.
It all depends on the question you're trying to ask, right? We're coming with the assumption that you already know that it's different based on your race. Your jackal is different based on your race. That's something we know. That's something we have been able to predict throughout the previous data. If you're trying to study the people who have diabetes, and if you're trying to find predictors of diabetes, you can do it retrospectively. You're like, you have diabetes, what is that predicted? You can target a special population, but if you're trying to do it like on the absolute, the question is like, what are the predictors? Then who said that it is female, male, gender, race that are the difference that it's mean that what's going to cause the disease?
Yeah, you're thinking of generalizable models, and I think they're very.
There's a very good example.
That's a great example. It's very.
There's an example of why that actually happened when an insurance company was looking at all the populations and they wanted to see who is it that they need to go and send coordinators to and nurses because they're very high risk of coming back and having chronic disease and what have you. And it turned out the model suggested that the people that actually said, oh, you need to send a nurse to see this person were all absolute white people. And what happened is the data didn't have the minorities because they didn't have the money to consider doctors. They never saw a doctor, and they actually went to 50%. So again, they should have. And it's no, but that's my point. There's bias. You shouldn't make bias if you can. You should know that there is bias.
I agree. The word when it's biased, as you just described, they don't know about. You obviously got to be careful. But I think but the point I'm trying to make is there's a difference between bias and personalized. You got to think about.
Yeah, the context, exactly. So we kind of fell into the question and answer. Great, we didn't stop and say start question and answer. So just one thing I wanted to add on, and then I'd like to hand the microphone around so we can hear the questions a bit better, is that there's a lot of promise in AI, there's a lot of fear. I happen to be a firm believer this is going to be better for the world, but we have to fit some disciplines, we have to fit so there's no exploitation, because everything human greed is based on exploitation. There has to be discussions around responsibility. If I design a robot to help the physician and the robot does the wrong thing, whose fault is it? Is it the physician's? Is it the engineer? Is it the company that made it? Sorry. Okay. So we have to answer all these things, but they are to support the opportunity, not to deter the opportunity. So with that, I wanted to actually go around and see formally who has questions and maybe give them a microphone.
Thank you, guys. So what are your fears of AI in healthcare?
I'd say misuse. So for example, and I think this is a solvable problem though, but I'll say it anyway. So if you go to ChatGPT today and you list some symptoms, ideally you do not want ChatGPT to diagnose you. So misuse, I think, is a big issue. I feel.
Maybe, along the same lines, I think it's unrealistic expectation. You'll kill it. It's a baby. You expect it to solve cancer and predict all this stuff, and I'm only going to work on a problem if it's the sexiest problem in the world and it's going to cure cancer. Realize the problem statements we just showed you are operational. They're not very exciting. And the expectations for them are no, just please help me, give me AIs at the end of the day. I want to do a lot of stuff. So I think unrealistic expectations that say, oh, you got to do this, you got to be unbiased. And you got to be. It's hard. These are hard. We don't need to solve all of them one day. Just have a smaller problem, and I think you'll survive better.
I love your question. I actually, it's funny because I always think the other side is what can healthcare and what can do for healthcare. Not there's the job displacement, which I don't really like. I don't know. I in healthcare I only see numbers, but I'm actually more scared of it. I think there is a lot that can go wrong. Anything, anything is a double-edged sword, and nuclear weapons. There's a lot of things that will go wrong, and we have to be very conscientious that this is conscious, I should say, that this is a very it's a very important technology. This is also a very dangerous technology, and it's a very powerful technology, and we have to be very careful what we develop and not have people go and use ChatGPT to diagnose themselves, and we just have to be very, very careful.
Anybody here watch Megan? Go watch that one. It's a very good movie and it's telling. Megan. M3GAN. Megan.
Sandra, you have a question?
Yeah. So one of the things that, when I was at NVIDIA, when we're going to see, hospitals, there's a disparity between the data that IT controls and from, accessing the data from the clinical side, labeling the data, accurately. Are you seeing more of an ingestion with the frameworks that NVIDIA offers, like with Clara and with Nemo? Are you seeing more of an uptick in that? And if so, what kind of success have you seen?
I think that, one of the frameworks with Nemo, you just mentioned the transformers, and again, I mentioned that today we don't need legal data to train a lot of these transformers. ChatGPT was not trained on legal data, it just ingested all of the data. We haven't seen a movie finish. That's enough. But basically, it's a robot that just like scanned all the data in the world and became like taught itself to be smart. I just spoiled. But so the transformer models are one of those things, and they are allowing people to, again, it's decreasing that hurdle that people have before. It's like you have to face so many mechanical turks and people component to label the data. But you still have to have some labeled data, but now it's much less than you did before.
Well, I think question actually for the crowd, just out of interest, how many of the people here are actually directly using or involved in developing AI? Is curious.
Actually, by definition, anybody with a smartphone is using AI.
You all work.
How many out here?
All right. Other questions? Please, if you don't mind grabbing the microphone, so we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to talk about increased bias and lack of personalization. Is that due to lack of data and us needing to get more data? So I work in the space of diabetes, and not diabetes really, but and we can talk about it later. Right now, I think 5% of the US is diabetic, but then 75% is obese and is on the way to becoming diabetic. Yet, who can afford to go and track their glucose continuously? And so I'm talking now about the legal aspect, the cost aspect, where all of that hinders just collecting data to be able to reduce bias, get more diversification among them. We have dealt with it in a certain way, but I'm curious for a guest to maybe talk about what have you seen is done on the legal side. For example, in the US, you have to go through a prescription to go get a continuous glucose monitor, whereas in Europe, people just walk in and buy it over the counter. And so, what is the root reason why people can't go and track their glucose? What is could be an interesting sort of data that can solve potentially the obesity epidemic that is happening in the US.
I think we talked about HEPA before, we talked about the value of data. I think if you are a user of the product, you have every right to give consent to share your data. Crowdsourcing data. So people who have this problem can wear a monitor
say to go and chat with monitor, only find that's fully capable.
It will cost you $600 per month to do that. So, which is where it might cost you way less than that if you step out of the US and walk to a pharmacy and see Canada or
I think there's something called Lumen where you actually tracks your glucose.
this is metabolic.
It's metabolic.
Yeah.
10 times more expensive in the US than anything else for any medication, any device. That's
Wasn't there recently a presidential mandate to reduce the cost of
on diabetes to $30 a month?
because people are becoming more aware that this is just ridiculous, right? For no valid reason. In some cases, the equipment is so expensive, underutilized, it's costing a lot. Already,
So I think that's just into this, even for healthy people, you and I. What's wrong with actually monitoring our glucose all the time? Now getting that data that everybody needs in order to early predict everything else. Listen, cool.
No.
It's really monitored.
But there are apps that one can do that for cheaper, but if you bring up a very good point in that most people that are able to afford those apps and subscriptions or whatever, now you're self-selecting the data, for people who are, for the most part, have access to care. So which can be used advice.
When you find your fill out forms, you'll see like amenities with white Caucasian. I mean, if you're defining, it's like in that of itself already, it's like it's a bias, right? So.
I don't want to totally change the direction of the topics, but when I'm NIH funded, and one of the big issues I have is all of our data should be public. I mean, the taxes are paid for it. So all of that data should be public. It shouldn't be a question. I mean, this guy, Aaron Schwartz, died over this, right? I mean, he died over JSTOR because he made it public. But there's things we could be doing right now to change the laws. We're talking about laws like our tax dollars are paying for this data. Everybody should have access to it, period.
I agree. You can actually access, I can tell every physician in the United States how many patients they've seen, how much money they've made, what procedures they've done. Public data, use CMS. What's wrong with having a de-identified version?
I think there's a movement towards it, but it's really slow and challenging. And even there's a bias in what data is meant to be deposited, right? Like they don't deposit all the data, like they're making it required now to de-identify and deposit data. But then even there, the NIH is selecting which data are released that way. And it's not all data, it's what they choose. And that's arbitrary and biased too.
But I don't believe it should be public.
No, it's the CMS funded data, meaning Medicare has paid for your care, right? Provided you a free service. Your data is now available. It should benefit the public because the public has paid for it. I paid for it.
Sure, if it's de-identified.
If it's de-identified.
Get into a car crash and then something's gonna.
They have no idea who you are.
And I get paid for sharing it, and it's used for other people,
Yeah, you're getting paid.
Right.
It's all possible.
right? I mean, I think that's fair for everybody.
I like it.
I think that's good. Sam.
Sorry, a quick question. I think a lot of what we're talking about is like, patient alignment within the US. What are some areas of opportunity that you believe, other countries, less technological or advanced countries can leverage AI now?
Wonderful. Butterfly networks, in my mind, is an amazing innovation because it enabled medical devices to be smart. You can actually send them to places where you don't have experts. One of the hardest problems we have is experts. Cardiac surgeon on your left. There's maybe 5 at Stanford, 10 at Stanford. There's probably 10 in all the country of Syria. And so experts are not available. That's where AI can really help. And I think that's why I got into really Abood knows and we built Clara and all of this stuff. Focus is how do we make these instruments smarter so people can have access to the same knowledge that we have.
Decision support system so that in a place where you don't have as many physicians, can you give this care to someone, to a nurse or to a physician assistant or someone and be able to give them enough information for them to make that decision. And you do telehealth so that you can some of that population. Then there's things that you don't think about, it's like, the vaccine, the fact that we didn't deliver the vaccine because it had to be so cold, like, with this technology and the different AI algorithms that allow you to create a vaccine that now does not need to be living at this low temperature. You can deliver it to Africa and India and wherever, and you can stay there for 2 weeks. So there's a lot of places, and I think it does increase access to care. There's instruments today that can look into your eye and, film just from a camera and tell you if you have diabetic retinopathy. But before you had to go to an ophthalmologist to do it, which, sometimes people don't have an ophthalmologist. So it is increasing access to care. But in the end, again, this is my jaded self. It's all about money and who's going to make money. They make this technology available as a
Abdul Hamid.
Why?
Infrastructure. I mean, I think we live in a bubble a little bit with all us talking about Silicon Valley and the United States, but when you go obviously to Europe, Middle East, et cetera, the infrastructure for IoT and all these devices isn't set there. It's not really financed by governments, I would say. So what are some of the incentives that globally we're doing to incentivize governments to allow for that infrastructure?
I think some of the countries, especially when they have something like medicine, it's actually cheaper for them to invest in AI, to invest in screening mechanisms to predict disease early and what have you. So.
But is there a global fund that allows for, African countries, Middle Eastern countries to come in and bring in that infrastructure to allow for such data to be shared at such a global level?
Hyperpoint sells all over as a fund these foundations. So there are a lot of foundations that are looking for solutions like that to provide access of care, access. But all you really need at this point is internet. And that's becoming pervasive everywhere. The 4G and the development of wireless, I think, so much more is available because you can offer it in the cloud. And that's the whole premise of AI. Can I take an existing sensor that's out there in the field, make it better?
That's my first time here. First of all, thank you very much, all of you. I really enjoyed this. It's my first time kind of attending.
That's the first time doing it.
I really appreciate it and just really proud to be with the team here and you're all doing great things. So I learned a lot. So I've been working in the AI field for a while and just a couple of comments that were made earlier. I like there's a comment and a question. The comment is, I really like the pragmatic approach that I heard, like there are some low-hanging fruit. Like let's not solve cancer. There's going to be time and space for that, but there are some low-hanging fruit. You talk about that really early on. Like we can't even get our electronic medical records in order yet. Like people refer people all over, you get approvals, offers. Like there's so much inefficiencies in the system, and automation is not fixing it. Intelligence has to fix it. And I think those are low-hanging fruit, and we should approach those aggressively because those can be solved. And I think they're very solvable problems. And if you solve those, then I think you start to approach the data problem. The second question is, I think you mentioned something around let's not have ChatGPT diagnose the disease. I would say, why not? Not in the sense of like, I'm not going to diagnose a very serious disease or a heart attack or anything, but I know, and I worked in emerging markets for 15, 16 years as well, and I've seen that access to healthcare is the problem. It's not the fact that it's expensive, it's you can't even get there. And I'm from Syria, and I'm like you, and there's like 90% of the population can't even find a doctor. So the question is, why can't we, like now synonymously with the finance community, you used to have all these planning and financial advisors, and I have all these robo-advisors that take your money and do something with it, and ironically it works so far better than the financial advisor, and it's cheaper. But why can't we have some of the most basic healthcare needs solved through AI, like common colds or basic antibiotics or basic wounds? And like there's sometimes you spend 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 days just to get a basic antibiotic or painkillers. Like that stuff is low point hanging fruit, very common, and access is the problem to that. It's not actually it's cost in emerging markets, but why can't we have robo doctors that can actually be limited in terms of what they can prescribe, and they can actually solve and provide access to a lot more people solve their issues before we attack the big audacious problems. Thank you.
I can make a quick comment. I think I don't see a reason why not, to be honest. I feel this problem can potentially be solved by just guardrailing, figuring out ways to guardrail the whatever, like the algorithm. So for example, if it's something that is, if I understood you correctly, like routine, then yeah.
Right.
Tell them, go to the pharmacy, get Tylenol, stay in bed for a couple of days, have a hot drink, and you should be good.
But ChatGPT will write your prescription.
Well, no, I don't know about now. I haven't tried it, so
That's the goal. So it should be zero cost, it should be free.
yeah.
Right? Nobody should pay for a painkiller like
And
that.
I feel the value in this is you don't really have to go to the, emergency room or urgent care for something trivial like this.
Right.
So you basically save that spot for somebody else who's in kind of a dire need.
Right.
But so that would be my opinion. Guardrail it enough so that the low-hanging fruit you're able to answer, and then stuff that is like super serious, like if somebody presents symptoms that are indicative, possibly indicative of something like multiple sclerosis or something, right? Well, probably want to see a doctor or clinician.
Yeah, and something here, we talked about health, you forget there's a big part of health is the public health sector, not physicians, people who are public health workers. Country like Costa Rica spends less than the US on healthcare. They have beaten us on life expectancy because they've paired up public health workers in the field. They don't call them. They don't have PhDs for much. They know what the aspects of the early indicators. And then if something like a problem like this, with those guys, they have that system. You can pair it up with some more intelligence. They can be very intelligent complex facilities. But I don't think you can just rely on someone putting up the money and say, here's the symptoms. This would be a partnership, but it doesn't have to require non-people to village Syria. It could be public health. The right is that not a pragmatic solution.
Yeah, that's great. I'd like to one of the problems that I've seen with generative models, transformers in general, is their job is to make up data. So I personally fly, so I was looking at airplanes, and I'm like, give me the gas consumption of the top 10 six-seater airplanes. Oh, listed numbers. One of them, I know the numbers wrong. I said, well, give me your source. You gave me a website. It's a made-up website. It did its job perfectly. It looked legit. Everything looks fine. And then I grabbed the website, I put it in and reply back and said, your website is wrong. Oh, I'm so sorry. You gave me another website. And so how do you, I don't know, for those who are involved in AI.
We aren't gonna be fixing the AI.
It's lying right now. The ChatGPT lies. It's not, it's lying. It's amoral. It'll just tell you an answer without, so right now, we're very far from.
Lying is one thing, hallucination is another thing.
But it does both. It does both, right?
That's exactly.
It's on me.
That's actually my area of research at Stanford.
Okay.
So we actually recently submitted a paper to Nature. It's under peer review that addresses that exactly. We're not putting the large language model in charge of creating data. We're retrieving it using UpToDate, EMJ, whatever. And the LLM is in charge of actually just synthesizing data and answering questions based on the retrieved data. So you're getting citation for free, and you're just generating the answer based on the retrieved data. It's factual. We did really well in papers in peer review.
And how do you ensure that the model did not insert a word that shouldn't be there?
Usually there's temperature setting. If you set it to 0, it's just gonna do it based on the text return.
100% fact. Yeah. Yeah. So the temperature thing is basically the hallucination.
Then I'm going to help you clean up that video there by.
Can I just say something, and Jack, I think the Sam's point about having someone that can listen to symptoms and maybe tell you what it is. ChatGPT is not the model for that. Chat has hallucinations, it has license, whatever. But can you create a chatbot that perhaps can look at the simple things? Yes. But again, this being adopted, some things that might look on the surface that they're nothing, and say, oh, So it is not as easy. It's just like, you know, if you look at in Lebanon, you have, my mom has like a whole cabinet of antibiotics. It's like, if you look at policy, oh, let's take this, there is more to it. There is more to it than just this symptom, and now we know that's exactly what you have. It's not, medicine is not science like that, not yet, but then you want it.
I think the idea that you had about like the doctor being augmented for AI, for the field workers, I think that's really a very practical bridge to better argument intelligence at some point in the future, but it's real need.
Yeah, I mean, the way I think about it too is if when you enable a clinician with AI, effectively you elevate the skill, right? So you can have an expert, let's say surgeon, but then you can have a mediocre surgeon, but with AI, it kind of levels the playing field. So I do see that.
You save a lot of lives that way.
That's good.
Sorry, this question is for you, Mona. So specifically with AI and imaging, medical imaging, I've seen, so as a cardiothoracic surgeon, I've seen other modalities, other specialties actually adopt AI faster than cardiologists. So there's been GI AI for detecting polyps, pathology, digital pathology, radiology is exploding. I went to RSNA last year, it was like 60 companies doing the same thing. In cardiology, we've seen very few. I mean, with very small successes or notable successes, very big, but a small number like HeartFlow, for example. But I haven't seen it take off in about TAVR, aortic valve replacements, or in planning for mitral valve surgery, or a bunch of things that I thought would be much better done with AI. There are small companies that have never really succeeded in gotten the momentum that AI in radiology has, for example. What's your perspective on that as a cardiovascular surgeon?
You mentioned, you know, there are some companies, you mentioned one of them, HeartFlow, called the operation, what have you. So there have people that had, the ones that succeeded, and that's seen, are the ones that became imaging in cardiology, not imaging. So they're looking at the pulmonary and said that one not, they do that one, whatever. So the other stuff that they're talking about, being able to replace, evolve, and being able to, you know, with AI after the future, I should hope it does. I should hope it does exactly, you know, the start of the phone that I have to search in the box. Today, it's just very little. I don't think people have been able to do it. You have to be able to see, as you're doing the surgery, you have to be able to see the effect of what you're doing, right there, and kind of simulate. And, you know, plus it's, if I fix the ball, and then the patient has been on life for 16 minutes, I don't have the luxury of going back and playing and trying different things. Can we have a digital twin and simulate that before we go to surgery? Yes, I hope so. But again, the technology is not there yet. We're getting there.
Another company, genetic technology, figuring out where to relate.
Yeah.
That was a huge.
Yeah.
It's totally random procedure, like you just do it on a blank basis and see if the heart starts beating over its way. That's what's happening actually. I'm trying to feel.
I think there's a lot of that, and just, you have to also align the incentives and another kind of certain
It's more aligning the incentive to see that's one of the problems, because even if you plan, how do you get reimbursed? You know, what's the
what you have to have a CMS code for standard for surgery.
HeartFlow is very interesting. You know, they're not very successful.
I know.
Why? Because the person who does the operations is the cardiologist, and he'll make a few $100s. If he refers you to HeartFlow, where you actually get imaging, the radiologist makes the $1,600. Right? It's always money.
But if you think about it, HeartFlow is successful in England because they have such a restaurant. Now that they tend to saving money because they don't have to do anything to that. So it all comes back to money. Right? That's what I'm of the story. Now you're right.
We want to bias the money.
So it's fine if you want to do is first of all, end this in kind of families, but also say we can continue in specialists without us sitting on policies.
Can we all come up with a name for our AI, Middle Eastern healthcare expert?
Yeah.